This hearing took a sharp turn when Senator Eric Schmitt pressed Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on one of the most controversial topics in government today, DEI. What followed wasn't just an answer. It was a strong, unapologetic stance that's already sparking debate.
Senator Schmitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's apropos that I'm following my friend from Maine. Missouri and Maine came into the union at the same time, but we couldn't disagree more on this particular point. We may have to separate here. I actually think it's interesting that Ukraine just came up because we've heard from my colleagues on the other side discussion about the cost of what the ongoing American effort. There was never a discussion about the $200 billion we were sending to a foreign country that's not even in NATO. Never. In fact, when amendments were offered for independent audits of how that money was spent, there was bipartisan opposition to that kind of oversight. So I find it really rich now that there's a complaint that we're not spending money on Ukraine. And by the way, $30 billion for salaries for bureaucrats, pensions, and social safety net programs and government operations to keep the state functioning during wartime. That's where American tax dollars are going, $30 billion for bureaucrats in Ukraine. And we just heard a speech for more money for Ukraine, yet the $1.5 trillion for this country is being balked at. I mean, I've seen Ukraine flags all over this Capitol for 3 years. At the same time, the same people call the President of the United States of this country a Nazi. So forgive me if I feel like we've lost our bearings a little bit. So I'm all for the America First agenda. I'm all for us realigning our priorities. I'm all for the national defense strategy that says our core strategic interests are the homeland, the Western Hemisphere, and the rising threat in China. And that means our European allies should step up. If Vladimir Putin is truly some existential threat and the next Hitler that's going to roll through Europe, you would think, by the way, he can't take Kiev, so you can't have it both ways. He hasn't made it to Kiev, but they would step up. And we better start demanding that, because if we want to meet the challenges of the 21st century in China, our priorities, our focus has to be somewhere else. It doesn't mean abandonment. It just means a true partnership with our European allies, who for a very, very long time have not stepped up. I want to ask you, Mr. Secretary, in your first year, one of the things I think that's really gone towards this morale and recruitment boom that we've seen through your leadership and President Trump was finally taking on the sort of cultural Marxism that had taken hold from the highest levels of leadership, from the President of the United States to your predecessor, this obsession with DEI. Could you just walk through maybe the worst example that you saw and a way that you address that and how it was affecting morale?
Well, thank you, Senator. First of all, I want to fully associate myself with the first 2.5 minutes of your comments, and I appreciate that perspective very much so. I would note $30 billion for bureaucrats in Ukraine is more than the bill that we've talked about today for a existential and critically important war to ensure that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon. That's worth noting. I haven't talked about it as much in these hearings because this is a budget hearing about $1.5 trillion that's historic and significant. But underwriting the change that we've seen at our department was a laser focus on getting back to basics. And the key word to that is merit. We had a department that was obsessed with gender, ideology, and race, diversity, equity, and inclusion. In fact, the mantra you would hear dripping from the lips of generals and with a serious look on their face was, "Our diversity is our strength," which is the single dumbest phrase in military history. Of course, our diversity is not our strength. Our unity is our strength, our shared purpose, the flag we wear, and the Constitution we serve to defend. And when you clear that debris away, whether it's Marxist ideologies or social engineering or political correctness or quotas based on gender and diversity, you get the best of the best rising up, regardless of gender, regardless of race, motivated by that environment where merit reigns. It's accountability, standards, lethality, readiness, training, all the debris wiped away. That is the secret sauce of the revival of the War Department, and why Americans are attracted to serving in it, and why those inside it, why morale is sky high. And any insinuation that it is not are coming from folks who haven't been in our units recently. Go visit the troops at every level, and their morale is at record levels.
And I want to talk about morale with the 15 seconds that I have left. I want to thank you for coming to St. Louis for your Arsenal of Freedom tour, where the next generation aircraft, the F-47, is being built by the hardworking men and women of Missouri who take a tremendous amount of pride for that aircraft that's going to go further, see further, go faster, have a bigger payload. And I know there's another decision coming with the FA-XX, but really appreciate your leadership, and thanks for coming.
Thank you, Senator.
Yep.
The exchange begins with Senator Eric Schmitt laying out a broader critique of U.S. priorities, particularly the massive financial support sent to Ukraine. He frames it as a contrast, billions going overseas while debates continue over domestic spending. Whether you agree or not, it sets the tone for what's coming next, a focus on priorities, accountability, and direction. But the real pivot happens when Schmitt turns to the issue of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion within the military. This is where the conversation becomes more ideological and, frankly, more controversial. Schmitt argues that efforts tied to DEI under the previous administration had a negative impact on morale and recruitment. He then asks a direct question: what was the worst example of this, and how was it addressed? Now, this is where Secretary Hegseth doesn't hold back. Instead of pointing to a single policy or isolated case, he broadens the critique entirely. He describes a military culture that, in his view, became too focused on identity, race, gender, and ideology, rather than performance and mission readiness. His core argument is simple: merit should be the standard. He emphasizes unity over diversity, saying that what truly strengthens the military is shared purpose, discipline, and commitment, not demographic differences. According to him, once those distractions were removed, morale improved and recruitment surged.